Welcome to Green Building Matters, the podcast that matters for green building professionals. Learn insight in green buildings as we interview today's experts in LEED and WELL. We'll learn from their career paths, war stories, and all things green, because green building matters. And now our host, and yes, he has every LEED and WELL credential. Here's Charlie Cicchetti.
Really excited to be joined by Tim Trefzer. Tim is a leader in sustainability, and we're going to talk about Tim's career and how he actually worked on LEED projects, kind of how he got into this industry. We're going to talk about some of the corporate sustainability and greening of events. So we've got a lot to cover, but Tim, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks, Charlie. I'm glad to be here, excited to join your podcast, and really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you.
Tim, here on the Green Building Matters podcast, we like to talk a lot about careers. We'll get into any kind of early lessons learned. You wish you had those words of wisdom, but let's just talk a little more about your background. Sure. You've got a couple degrees. Can you tell us about that?
Sure, yeah. My background my education started at Florida State University, and that's actually how I got into the green building movement, really, is I was studying what was essentially commercial real estate development, construction, management, and was introduced to LEED and had never even considered sustainability from a building's perspective. And at that point, it was still pretty new, so it wasn't very wide-reaching at that point. But so I decided to run with it because I'd always been passionate about sustainability and wanted to combine the two passions of mine, real estate and sustainability, and ultimately was able to get a internship in Tallahassee doing LEED consulting with a local construction company, and help them go through a new construction and an existing building project. And from there, it bloomed, and I ended up coming to Atlanta, joining a small sustainability consulting firm, doing a number of LEED projects all around the country. But one of my projects had been the Fort Lauderdale Convention Center, and helped them go through LEED for existing buildings. And after a few years, I just realized that I wanted to do something a little bit more holistic, rather than just focus on a building level. And so the opportunity with the Georgia World Congress Center Authority became available. And at the time, this was back in 2010, at the time, there was very few people who had sustainability and convention center experience. So that was how I got into my current organization. I also, while working, was able to obtain a master's degree in sustainability leadership from Arizona State. And that program was unique in that it was a hybrid, so it was partially online, partially in person. So I was able to do it while working, and was a phenomenal program and gave me a lot of insight into leadership and communications, and really trying to strategically incorporate sustainability into an operation.
It's amazing, Tim, the new titles that are out there, even the last 3 to 5 years, the new degrees. I think when you had first told me about that sustainability leadership master's, I was like, I've never heard of that. That's pretty groundbreaking. So let's talk about that for a minute. You really, I believe, were one of the first in that program, and you got so much out of it. I think you're giving back. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I was. So Arizona State is really a leader in terms of higher education sustainability. They have a school of sustainability, and they've had that for over 10 years, and have been doing a number of undergraduate sustainability degrees. But now at the time, this is in 2014, they came out with a new master's program. And again, it was a phenomenal experience. They've since even blossomed that into they've got a separate but totally online master's program in sustainability leadership that I'm now leading one of the courses on. That's called Global Context. So it's all about the global context of sustainability. So thinking big picture, and that's been a great program too. Both programs have seen a lot of success.
I'm around buildings, that's what I do. But in a program like that, Tim, tell us who's in the class. I mean, can you tell us a few friends you've made, probably from other industries?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. My particular cohort, which was the first cohort, we had individuals that were from huge corporations like Bayer. There were other folks that were with local governments out of Arizona. There were nonprofit leaders. There were independent consultants that just wanted to get more experience and understanding. So it was kind of across the board, just range of people with understanding of sustainability, but most of us somehow had a way to integrate sustainability into our organization. So we had some sort of influence.
Yeah, you had that foundation. I mean, yours has been LEED, energy efficiency, zero waste, I believe, down at the Georgia World Congress Center Authority. Those not in Atlanta, like you and I are right now. Tim, help us understand what your role oversees. You have several buildings, a lot of property. Can you talk about your role today?
Yeah, my role is, so the Georgia World Congress Center Authority owns and operates the Georgia World Congress Center. That's the fourth largest convention center in the country. It's almost 4 million square feet. We also own and operate Centennial Olympic Park. And until March this year, we owned and operated the Georgia Dome, but that has closed down and has been succeeded by the new Mercedes-Benz Stadium, which is also on our campus. We actually own that building, but we don't operate it. The Falcons do. So my role is working with all the different stakeholders on our campus to incorporate environmental sustainability into both our operations as well as our events, but also to, and this is a new aspect of my role, really look at our integration within the community and how we can more seamlessly be integrated within the community, become that neighbor of choice rather than just this behemoth campus that, is downtown Atlanta.
Yeah, I mean, the Olympics in 1996 were a big deal in Atlanta. Yeah. Now you've got to oversee a lot of events there. But one thing with corporate events, because I know you have a passion not just for sustainability. You've done several LEED projects, previously as a LEED consultant and project manager, now with the buildings that you help oversee. But let's talk a little bit about greening of events, so to speak. It's a fascinating movement, I'd say. But can you talk a little bit about a 4 million square foot convention center and some of your clients that come in? They really want a greener event. Can you speak to that?
There's no simple solution to greening an event. Every event is different. And that's what makes facilities like convention centers or stadiums and arenas very difficult to measure their impacts, because every year, the amount of attendance, the number of events, the types of events, the location within your buildings of events, all affect your performance. So your energy, water, waste are all affected by those various variables that are out of my control. So for an event itself, it ultimately needs to be driven by the event manager, the meeting planner. They're the ones that have the contracts with the decorators, the contractors, the convention center. So we work closely with them to try to help them understand what we can be doing, or what they could be doing from a sustainability standpoint. But ultimately, that really just comes down to waste and recycling. So energy, that's all their choice.
And I know you have a big solar installation project, so some of the energy that's being used could be renewable. Offsets, I'm sure a lot of clients maybe want to offset their event.
Surprisingly,
not as many as we'd like.
Right,
okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
But the waste, let's talk about waste, because the Georgia World Congress Center, 4 million square foot, LEED Silver, recertifying to LEED Gold. I know you're very excited about that initiative.
Any day now.
And let's talk about the waste, because I think you're in a zero waste zone. You've really prided yourself in composting and dealing with a lot of those displays after someone leaves an event. What's the hardest thing about moving towards zero waste?
The hardest thing is the time limitations. And what I mean by that is, after an event closes, there's a contracted company that typically sets up and tears down an event. And that contracted company, who has a contract with the event planner, has to get out of the building in a certain amount of time. So typically what they do is they tear everything down as fast as they can and just toss it all into the nearest open top or compactor that they can find, because they have to be out of the building. Now, working with them, trying to identify locations that they can place things, trying to identify ahead of time things that can be donated, those are strategies that we've been trying to integrate, but that's definitely not their priority, so it often falls by the wayside.
The business side of it, right? You've got another entity coming in that needs that space.
Yeah.
So good point there. Wish we had more time. Let's talk about, what have you, Tim, changed your mind about in the last few years? Maybe something with sustainability, greening of a sporting event. What's something you've changed your mind, and maybe why?
Changed my mind.
Maybe you thought this was the way, maybe something would never happen, but now there's possibilities for it to happen, or I'm just curious if there's anything you've kind of done an about face with in your career. And we can come back to that one if you want.
No, I'll answer. I think, well, you brought up sports, and I think that's been something that has drastically changed over the 7 years of my tenure with the authority. When shortly after I started, an organization out of the Northwest called the Green Sports Alliance was launched. And that organization was initially just 6 Northwestern-based teams and venues that just formed an alliance to talk about sustainability within sports. And today, that organization, so just 6 years later, is over 500 members. Almost all the major leagues in the country are members. Every NHL team and venue is a member. So the sustainability in sports movement has just blown up and is really encouraging, because sports plays such an influential role in our society. And the ability to leverage that by incorporating sustainability both within a venue but also trying to affect fan behavior is pretty significant. So that's been really neat. And there's even been certifications that have come out for sustainable events that typically sporting events, or at least the Olympics, have really embraced. And so I'd say sustainability in sport has been a huge, huge change.
Big change, a big about face. We do a lot of education here. That's a big part of my role. Do you think some of that's just education? So maybe the Green Sports Alliance, I believe they have an annual event, and maybe here's what Tim is doing at Mercedes-Benz and at the Georgia World Congress Center. And is it just sharing and best practices? Finally, people say it's not as hard as maybe it used to be. Can you speak to that a little bit? How does just been there, done that, the education here, I'm very open book, here's how we did it. Is there a good transfer of knowledge in the industry you're in?
Yes. Yes to all of that. And I think, well, the sports industry is inherently competitive, so everyone wants to one-up each other. But once they've accomplished something, it's such a small community in reality that everyone's willing to share information with each other. It's very open. The Alliance has become very educational based. But yeah, they do have that annual conference, and they've started putting on more regional workshops. Last year, I hosted a green cleaning in sport workshop at the Georgia Dome in conjunction with the Green Sports Alliance.
Okay.
So they've been doing more like hands-on, getting experts to come in and talk to staff about different strategies and different ways to think about sustainability. But yeah, it's been a phenomenal process and a phenomenal change over the last 6 years.
That's very exciting. Let's talk about LEED for a minute in buildings. There's LEED for new construction, so Mercedes-Benz going to be a LEED Platinum building. There's LEED for existing buildings, and a lot of what you do operating day to day as a sustainable building. I know you have a couple of LEED Gold buildings under your oversight. So talk about LEED. What do you like about it? What do you maybe wish that LEED would iterate and to better accommodate for your type of buildings?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. I think LEED is an awesome tool for convention centers and stadiums in particular because, again, we don't have that ability to benchmark ourselves. Like a typical office building can easily see its decrease in energy the next year over year, whereas ours, could fluctuate pretty significantly. So LEED gives us that benchmark, and it allows us to compare ourselves against other buildings that, the convention industry is hugely competitive as well. I mean, here in Atlanta, we're now competing with smaller regional cities like Nashville and Charlotte, which we typically weren't competing with ever before, but both have recently built brand new LEED certified buildings and tout the fact that they have a green building. So this way, we're able to say, well, we're LEED silver or LEED gold, they're only certified. So from a competition standpoint, it makes a lot of sense too. But, I think being able to show an improvement by having that as a tool and a baseline has been very significant for the industry.
I think a lot of people might think that LEED only fits for certain types of buildings. Mm-hmm. You've been able to apply LEED to some pretty big, complicated buildings. I believe in 2014 you were the largest LEED certification in the world.
Yeah.
And so that's just amazing.
Yeah.
So I think the lesson learned here to those listening is you can apply LEED to many different building types, and maybe it fits okay for convention centers.
Yeah.
What do you wish, though, that LEED, if it were to make adjustments in the future, is there a credit, if Tim could write a new LEED credit, it would be for what?
Wow, that's a good question.
And in the meantime, maybe you use it as innovation points for hey, this is something extra we do. Let's get some extra LEED points for it. But is there something you see over and over again that should be added?
Well, I think in particular for a convention center, if we were to use this as an innovation point, integrating somehow in all of your events, either a sustainability policy or sustainability criteria or something in contracts even, just because we are a convention center doesn't mean we control everything that happens in the building, and unfortunately we don't. So it's if we were able to strategically incorporate that into what our events are doing, then I think we'd have an even greater influence.
Thank you for that. Let's talk about some awards. You've won some individual awards. Your buildings have won awards. Recently, Tim, congratulations on the E3 Trident Award. Can you tell us about that, and what does that mean to you?
Yeah, no, thanks, Charlie. The E3 Trident Award was awarded to me by the Metro Atlanta Chamber of Commerce. They have this annual awards ceremony where the E3 is environment, equity, and economy. So really acknowledging different organizations and individuals that are working to improve the health of Atlanta, both from a economic standpoint, but also an environmental standpoint. And so the Trident Award is awarded to an individual that has done significant work in this area. And I was really honored to be given the award. Last year, the winner was Bill Strang, the president of Toto, the toilet manufacturer. And so to be in the same category as someone like that is pretty significant and meaningful.
That's fantastic. And I think to those listening, it's okay to go after some individual awards. In some cases, you're nominated by others. You might not know it. And others, it's okay for you to apply. But your buildings, too, get that recognition. If anything, for others to know, who should I call upon for that? They've already done it, and I'd love to learn from them. I'd love to mentor from them. So that's great. Tim, what's around the corner with sustainability or green buildings? Maybe over here we have artificial intelligence and self-driving cars, and what are we going to do with parking lots when they're all self-driving cars? Mm-hmm. Sure, we can have that talk, but from where you sit, how your career is going to continue, what do you think's around the corner that we all need to be aware of?
Well, I think you've been spot on some of the conversations that we've had about health, especially from like a certification like WELL. I think human health is definitely on the horizon and being more realized how impactful the interior spaces that we occupy can have on our health. But I also think equity is also becoming more and more significant. People are realizing that the social component of sustainability has often been left out of the equation, and we've got to stop ignoring that aspect. So really trying to understand, whether it be equitable housing within your community or diversity within your staff. There's a lot of missed opportunity around that area that I keep seeing is coming up more and more to the surface. So I think that's a great thing, and it's happening now.
You're spot on, I think. I mean, the triple bottom line that the U.S. Green Building Council promotes is people, profit, planet, right? Yeah. And so the people side, we could argue health and wellness, absolutely. But equity, I think you're right. It has to be talked about more. So, no, thank you for that. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about what makes Tim successful. Do you have any routines or any rituals you do? I mean, because here we are as busy professionals. Maybe we have LEED credentials, WELL credentials. We might work on buildings. We might green up events, and we might even teach. But what do? Do you have any go-to routines that have helped you?
I'm insanely organized.
Okay, good.
I have to be organized. I live by my Outlook calendar. I put everything on there. I mean, and if I didn't, I would definitely not be as successful as I am today. I think organization and communication, just being able to effectively communicate, helps ease a lot of issues that others tend to have.
And knowing sometimes it's not all email, it's pick up the phone, and it's a lost art to have a phone conversation with someone these days. So let's talk about early in your career. What advice do you wish you'd have received you didn't get then? We've got a lot listening that maybe they're breaking into a green building career. Maybe they're newer into this movement, or maybe they were doing something else in their career and they're making a pivot. They really want to get into sustainability and green building. So what advice do you wish you might have received early in your career?
That you don't have to necessarily be in a sustainability position to have an impact. I think a lot of people focus in on those titles or certain positions, when in reality you could be a banker and still have a big impact on your organization or whatever sustainability attribute that you're trying to affect. So I would say, then that's what I say when I speak to college students. I say, you don't have to, you can do whatever you want to do and still have a sustainability impact. Or maybe that's how you become a sustainability professional, is by getting an alternative position in an organization and then slowly tweaking and raising ideas that eventually show an ROI or an impact that your business benefits from. One other thing that no one actually gave me advice about, but I kind of made it my motto over the first few years of my career, was never say no. And by that I mean, for any opportunity that I was given, whether it be speaking, whether it be joining a board, whether it be, just going out and volunteering in the community, I would never say no to any opportunity. And that's benefited me so much because of the people that I've met, just the things that I've learned. And so I would just say, don't be picky about what your opportunities are. Just take advantage of everything, especially while you're young, because
sure,
you might not have a family. Or
you got to put yourself out there, and it's about relationships, right? I mean, that's one of the core values that we have here at our company, is just relationships. So let's talk a little bit about, have you read any good books lately? What are one or two of the last books you've read or listened to? I do a lot of Audible myself, but were there a couple books you'd recommend?
I do Audible too.
Okay, good.
Love it. I'm actually listening to right now Jimmy Carter's new book, A Full Life: Reflections at 90.
Wow.
And I consider myself an honorary Georgian because I've been here 10 years now.
Sure. Well, wow, yeah.
And I, frankly, didn't know a whole hell of a lot about Jimmy Carter. And the Carter Center is within a mile of my home, and I still don't know that much. I've been a really disappointed, bad Georgian, but it's really been giving me a lot of insight into who he is, his leadership, his character, and it's been pretty fascinating.
I will check that out. There's another project here in Atlanta. Some of you that visit, it's Ponce City Market. It used to be the Sears Roebuck building, and then it was City Hall East here for Atlanta. But rumor has it that parts of, or maybe most of the house that Jimmy Carter grew up in Plains, actually was a Sears catalog home, and it came through and out of that building. So, fun fact.
They even mentioned that in the book.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good. Who plays Tim Trefzer in the movie?
Yeah. You know who I get a lot of, or at least I used to? I used to get Russell Crowe all the time.
Oh, there you go.
So I don't know if I still look like him or not, and I wouldn't necessarily want him to play me. I don't know. That's a good question, though.
Tim, we'll start to wrap up here. I mean, it's been a lot of fun. I mean, you've given some good advice. We're going to put in the show notes where people can come read up on some of the case studies you've done at the convention center. Obviously, Mercedes-Benz is a nice highlight. But any parting advice here that you would give to someone trying to get into sustainability, I'd argue, because some advice I give, and let's see if you can add to it, is when it comes to sustainability, I think there's kind of the real estate component, and then maybe that's you want lead and you want to save energy for a company, right? All companies, even if you're a work from home entrepreneur, you have a piece of real estate. Maybe you lease it, maybe you own it, maybe you work from home, but there's kind of the lead and the real estate side. There's the corporate sustainability side, which you do a lot of work in, and then maybe there's renewables, and then outside of that maybe is governance and maybe even working for nonprofits or the government. But I say there's 3 or 4 buckets. Am I missing any? And how do you decide which one of those you might want to go down if you're early in your career?
Well, I don't know if you're missing any, but I would specify that those corporate entities are really leading in sustainability. And I think especially these days, you can't depend on government necessarily to be a leader in the environmental movement. So I've been seeing a lot of these huge organizations really stand up and commit themselves to becoming more sustainable. So I don't think you missed that. I think you mentioned that, but I did want to bring that out. What was your other question?
Yeah, sorry, I jumped around a little bit. So I feel like with sustainability, there's kind of the real estate, so the design, construction, operations bucket. There's the corporate, which is a big one. You're right. Maybe there's renewables. And then there's kind of the governance or even the nonprofit side of it. But I think a lot of people coming out of college assume they can go straight and run corporate sustainability for a huge company. And I've given some advice that I think you need a foundation. And for you, Tim, I think yours was real estate, lead, efficiency. That helped you get to where you're at now with the authority. So what other early experience could someone get maybe if they want to ultimately do corporate sustainability?
Well, one way might be to go about doing it through a nonprofit.
Okay.
Another way might be going through a corporate entity, but through a volunteer program or some other aspect that really has some sort of community impact. But even, before we started this, you and I were talking about it's who you know, not what you know.
Sure.
And I really think if you just make the right connections with certain people, you'll find a way in somehow, or someone will find a way in for you into corporate social responsibility. So I think there are different avenues you can take rather than just going straight forward.
Good. Tim, any final comments just on the green building movement you've had? Any final advice, and we'll wrap up.
Yeah. I think green buildings have definitely leveraged sustainability into a different plane. I mean, it's really affected all aspects of organizations aside from the built environment. So I think it's been great, especially for our organization, and appreciate all the influence that you guys have had on our greening our buildings. And hopefully we'll have a LEED Gold convention center, the world's largest LEED certified convention center in the world, in the next few weeks. And again, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
This has been great. And the Green Build Conference is coming to your convention center in 2 years, so 2019.
Right.
So next year is McCormick in Chicago, 2018. 2019 will be at the LEED Gold Convention Center. So, Tim, thanks for being on the Green Building Matters podcast, and it's always good to have a chat with you. Thank you.
Thanks, Charlie.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Green Building Matters podcast. At gbes.com, our mission is to advance the green building movement through best-in-class education and encouragement. Remember, you can go to gbes.com/podcast for any notes and links that we mentioned in today's episode, and you can actually see the other episodes that have already been recorded with our amazing guests. Please tell your friends about this podcast. Tell your colleagues. And if you really enjoyed it, leave a positive review on iTunes. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on next week's episode.